All right, I'm gonna start with the oversized sweater for sew along today. I'm choosing to do the pocket, so I'm gonna start right with that. The first step with your pocket is these parts here where your hands go, and you have to hem them 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna fold it down. I've got my little measuring tool here. Oh, forgot my clips. All right. I'm gonna do the same on this side. Okay, I'm gonna take this over to my my cover stitch, and I'm gonna top stitch this here to keep this in place. You can use your regular sewing machine, using any stitch you really want. There's no real need for a whole lot of stretch here with this one. So I'm gonna do that and then bring it back. All right, so I've got this here nicely hemmed. The next step is we're gonna fold the remaining raw edges, also 1/2 inch, and then we're just gonna pin them down, or you can use your clips, whichever you prefer. So now your pocket's gonna look like this with your pins or your clips in place. All right, so now to get our pocket where we need it to be, the first thing I'm gonna do is fold my pocket piece in half to mark my center. Looks like my clips are pretty close to center. So now I know that these two reds are my center, and then this is the front of my shirt or my sweaters, which I also have in half. For this part, it's going to differ depending on what version you're doing. So if you're doing the hemmed version like I am, so I'm going to have this hemmed with the drawstring, you're going to use the sweater cut line from the pattern, where you would have cut if you're doing the version with the band at the bottom, as your mark for where your pocket's going to go. And if you're doing the sweater line, so you are adding the band, then you're going to put your pocket away at the bottom. So for myself, I'm going to be doing I'm going to be hemming this over. So I believe I have that marked, and I'm going to do this. And that's roughly where my center is. When I get a pin. When I do this, I'm only going through one layer of my shirt so that I can still flip it. All right. Actually looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to use my pins here to get it all secure, because the next step we're going to have to top stitch this on. So I'm going to use a decent amount of pins. So I'm going to finish that, and when you do this, you're going to top stitch up here, these parts, and down here. You're not going to do this because you want to still be able to get the hands in for the pocket. So it's going to be up here, and then these other. All right, I'm going to give a little bit more clear explanation of the version of this that I am doing. So I'm doing the one with the hem facing. That's a newer term for some lowland patterns. So what that means is I didn't cut the band piece like a lot of sweaters have, because I'm going to do the hem facing. You're going to cut these hem facing pieces. And what these are essentially, they're going to act as your hem. So later on in the pattern, we'll sew these together and attach them to the bottom to flip under. So that's the version of this that I'm doing with the drawstring. So later on in the video, I will add buttonholes for my drawstring to go into. So there's other versions for this. There's just with a band at the bottom, and then there's the dress version with the split hem also. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go over all of them today, so I just picked which one that I preferred for my kiddos today. All right, now since I have chosen to do the drawstring version, there's two ways to do this. You can add grommets or a buttonhole. I'm going to do a buttonhole because I don't have a grommet tool yet. Or you can skip this step and later on you can just cut holes if you're using knit fabric and still weave your drawstring through. You don't need to add the buttonholes, but I prefer to for this one. So I'm going to flip this wrong side up, and I need to find the center of my top again. So I've got that. And then it's going to go about 1 inch up. I have a little 1x2 piece of interfacing, and we want that to go, like I said, about 1 inch from the bottom, centered. I'm going to get my iron and I'm going to press this on. So I forgot to mention, this is just regular Pellon, I think SF 101 interfacing, lightweight, nothing crazy. If you don't have that, you can use a piece of woven fabric, or like I said, you can use nothing at all. It just kind of gives it a more professional look and stabilizes. For my sewing machine, if I don't use this and I try and do buttonholes, it just doesn't work even on this light, heavier French terry. So if you're using grommets, you'll want to use a 1/2 inch to 3/4 size grommet, or the same with the buttonhole. So since I don't have, this is my buttonhole foot, I'm just going to gauge, you know, this opening here to, like, usually put your button in here and that decides how big your buttonhole is going to be. I'm just going to open it so that it's about 1/2 inch. And then I'll bring you over to the sewing machine for the buttonhole part. Okay, having some measuring issues. So I ended up going back and I marked my center line, and then I marked 1 inch up. I messed up, that's the wrong one. 1 inch up, because I felt like that gave me a better guide as to where I want to put these. So I'm going to line it up with that center line and the 1 inch up line, my foot here. So I'm going to use this as my gauge, and then when I do the other side, I'm just going to slide it over, and then I'm going to start sewing 1 inch up, and I think that'll. All right, I finished my first buttonhole and I just slided it over. So now that center line is lined up here, and I drop my foot so it starts on that 1 inch mark. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna make another quick button. Okay, just to reiterate here what I did, I ended up marking 1 inch, ignore the second line, I messed up, and 1 inch up from my hem. And this is, again, if you're gonna do the hem, if you're gonna use these hem facings, I want it, and then this is my center. So when I lined up my buttonhole foot, I used this is the guide and this is the guide. So they're fairly even. They're not perfect, but it'll do for this. All right. Now I'm gonna use my my stitch ripper to open up the buttonholes real quick. You just gotta be careful not to go through your thread. Okay. Then our next step is to sew our front and back together so we can be ready for our sleeves. So I've got my front, my back. I'm going to lay them right sides together, and I'm going to line up these shoulder bits right here, throw in a few clips, and then since I'm doing the hood also, I'm going to do both of these really quick. I've got my front and my back sewn together. I'm going to open it up, right sides up, and we're gonna sew on the sleeves. So I'm going to take my sleeve, I'm going to fold it in half to get my center mark. And then the center is where I'm going to line up with the shoulder seam right sides together. And then I'm just going to clip my ends here. There should be no stretching as you sew this on, it'll fit just so. So I'm going to put on this sleeve, and then I'm also going to put on the other sleeve. All right, now that you've got your sleeves on, the side's going to kind of look like this. You're going to put everything right sides together. And you're going to line up your sleeves and this little armpit piece and sew all the way down the sides. And you're going to do that on both sides. So I'm just all right, and then I'm gonna sew both these sides together. All right, so my sweater's still inside out, but I've got my sleeves are all attached now on both sides. The next thing we're gonna do is attach our cuffs. So here are my cuffs. I'm gonna take them, fold them right sides together and stitch along here. Okay, all right, now I've got my cuffs here. Oh, my kid's running in. I'm gonna fold these this way so your seams are on the inside, and that's gonna give you your cuffs. So for this one, now to attach these, I still have my sweater inside out. I prefer to do it this way. I'm making a video for sewing. I'm gonna have you be quiet, okay? All right, so I like to slip them inside so I have it wrong side out, and then I like to slip them inside so it's right sides together on the inside. And I line up the seams, and then you kind of give your halfway point. Because of the nature of this sweater, you're gonna have a lot of stretch here for these cuffs. So I'm gonna pull it across until it's even, and then I'm gonna mark that center. And then if you feel more comfortable, you can stretch again. Make sure all three raw edges are together. You can stretch again until it's flat. You don't want to stretch until your sweater stretches. You want that to stay, normal. And then mark and add another clip if you prefer to quarter it that way. And then you're going to just sew along this circle. Now we've got our cuffs. I turn my sweater right side out just to give a good look, and this is what we have so far. If you're doing the hood like I am, I'm going to move on to that next. I'm going to take my hood pieces, flip them this way for you, lay them right sides together, and then I'm going to put some clips in just around the curved part, and this is where your face opening is, and then that's where it's going to attach to the sweater, so we don't want to sew those together. So I'm going to throw some clips in. And then again, I'm just going to take this over to my serger, and I'm going to sew along here. Okay, this is what our hood looks like sewn together. The next thing we're going to do is hem the face opening. So I'm going to open this up. It's going to be 1/2 inch hem, so I'm going to fold it, and then again with my measuring tool, make sure it's 1/2 inch. So that's what that looks like. And then I'm going to go side out to my cover stitch, and I'm just going to hem that fold. Okay. This is what my hood looks like. I'm gonna press it a little bit, but we're gonna attach it to the sweater now. So I'm gonna take my sweater piece and I'm going to find my center front and my center back. And then I'm gonna take my hood here, and this is my center back, so I'm going to do right sides together and line it up with the center back right here. And then I'm gonna wrap it around to the front. And then I'm gonna overlap these just a little bit. So almost just the seam. And it should fit. It should fit just so without any stretching. So to go over this, my hood, it's kind of draped over so that they're right sides together. And then I'm gonna sew along here, making sure, especially in the front, that all of these raw edges get sewn together. All right, now that our hood is attached, it should look like this. You can kind of see where it's overlapping a little bit in my center. Now I'm gonna go to the hem facing part, since that's the option I'm doing today. We're gonna take our hem facing pieces. So they both, you know, kind of have the curve. So I'm gonna lay them right sides together and sew, I don't know if you can see these edges here. So let me do that first. I might have misspoke before. So your front hem face piecing is gonna be a straight piece, and your back is gonna have the curve to it. So there is a difference between the two. But I've got them sewn together, and then we will attach them to the bottom of the sweater. So this kind of took me a minute. When you put your hem facing pieces right sides together after you've sewn them together, again, your top one is going to be the straight piece, and then your back hem face piecing is going to be slightly curved. So I have them right sides together. I'm gonna flip this over, so this is the back of my sweater. And so your curve is gonna match the curve of your sweater when you put it right sides together. So everything's gonna swerve this way. Or curve that way, I guess. And then we're gonna, this actually makes like hemming your curved hem tees and things like this a lot easier, these hem facings. So now I'm gonna stitch this on. Okay. So now we have this hem facing piece on here. It's like an extension essentially. And we're gonna fold it under, completely under, where the seam is gonna be the bottom of your sweater. And then we're gonna iron it to just make sure it all sits right. All right, so I'm gonna go along here. I'm gonna iron all of this together. I've got this all ironed, and I'm gonna take my drawstring. The pattern has the requirements for the drawstring length, and I'm just gonna feed my ends through here. I'm gonna do a quick knot. And then when we just gonna get these tucked, make sure, so you're gonna fold it into your hem facing, And you just want to make sure it's tucked out of the way because we're gonna top stitch this now, and you don't want to catch your drawstrings. You want to be able to cinch it tight if you want. So I'm gonna put my pins up top here, and then I'm making sure that my drawstring is pushed all the way up by the seam so that when I go to top stitch it, I'm not going to catch my drawstring. So I'm going to do that all the way around. All right, and that is that. So I've got my top stitch here. It closes off this hem facing. My drawstrings here, so you can cinch this baby up. And that is that for this one. There are a couple more versions of this, but like I said, I'm only able to do the one for this video. But if you have any questions about the other versions, we'll all be here, all the admin on the page will be there to answer any questions you might have. Love to see what you guys make.